True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. As most of you know, I have over 28 years of federal law enforcement investigative experience. And on this channel, we like to cuss and discuss crime. The biggest thing here is we like to advocate for victims, advocate for justice, use this platform to really bring forth matters that at least in this instance, certainly are mind boggling when it comes to justice. For those of you who don't know who Ellen Greenberg was, she was a 27-year-old, absolutely stunning young woman. She was a teacher and she was engaged when on the 26th of January, 2011, she was found deceased in her apartment that she shared with her fiance by her fiance. Now, this is where everything goes awry. She had 20 stab wounds, 20 stab wounds, including stab wounds in the back. I'm going to show you right back in this area and in the back of the head, pretty centrally located, a huge stab wound, multiple stab wounds in the chest, and a knife protruding from her chest. Now, initially, it was ruled, her death was ruled, the manner was a homicide. And of course, that made all the sense in the world. But sadly, a closed door meeting occurred between the prosecutors, law enforcement, and the medical examiner, Dr. Osborne, and he ended up changing that ruling and changing the manner of death to her taking her own life. I have to be careful on YouTube. So her taking her own life from a homicide. Now, this is absolutely shocking. She was found leaned up against a cabinet. There were 2 knives used. How many people would possibly take their own life and then switch knives in the middle of it? She purportedly was moved after death from a supine position to a position of leaning against a cabinet when her fiance walked in on her. And let me explain that. He had exited to go work out, according to his version of events, came back from the workout, tried to get the door open. It was locked. And I ask you, by the way, how many of you would have had this reaction? His reaction was to, beat in the door. This was one of those locks that you often see in hotel rooms. So actually forcibly try to get that door open. I've always maintained that that cannot be done with a shoulder against the door. It would cause so much damage to the door frame, to the door, to the locking mechanism. I have posted multiple times on my Twitter X a picture of this latch. There is no way, in my opinion, that is how this is opened. We have practiced breaching such doors as a team when I was on SWAT. I've posted videos of SWAT teams getting into doors with multiple people with battering rams, getting into such a door to show how highly difficult this would be. Nevertheless, that's what he maintains happened, and that he came in and came upon her. He calls 911, and I really recommend you Google the Ellen Greenberg 911 call, because it should be in the category of most ridiculous 911 calls. And I'll tell you why. They are asking what happened. And he basically says, I'm just paraphrasing all of this, he doesn't know what happened. And then later they said, well, can you give her CPR? And he says, well, I can't. She's got a knife protruding from her chest. Well, why didn't he say that from the beginning? It looks like she's been stabbed to death with a knife. You can see there's no emotion. Everybody acts differently. But in this case, I believe it was an absolute abomination of somebody who would be calling about somebody that they loved. In any event, after she was found, She was delivered to the morgue. It was sort of went from a homicide quickly to people saying it had to be a suicide because she was by herself. Again, if you're going to believe wholesale this fiance. And sadly, what happened after that was the unthinkable. The unthinkable was that relatives of her fiance gained access to the apartment. They removed electronic devices. And this is literally unbelievable, but they got permission from the management of the apartment. I shouldn't say they did. The apartment management sought approval to get the apartment cleaned. It was given to them by law enforcement before it had ever been properly processed. And they hired a professional cleaning company that cleans up after homicides to completely clean the crime scene the next day. So on the 28th, when investigators showed up to actually conduct a proper crime scene investigation, it was too late. It was too late. Long story short, that is what happened to Ellen Greenberg. I believe from all the information that I've seen, and it's extensive, autopsy photos, the Greenbergs have been amazing in allowing access to all this information because they want their story known. They want this injustice rectified, and they have fought the hard fight. What happened in court is they are seeking essentially to charge the ME's office, the law enforcement officers, and the district attorney's office with a conspiracy to essentially cover up, if you will, this case and what really happened. Specifically, they have alleged willful misconduct. Now, what happened in the lower court was it was found, if you can believe it or not, that you're right. There was willful misconduct, and we believe in the facts in this about 39-page decision. It was a 2-1 split in the lower court, but they decided, please have a seat for this one because it's unbelievable. They decided that the Greenbergs had no standing. What does that mean legally? They basically said, listen, the Greenbergs haven't been harmed. Only Ellen was harmed. So because only Ellen was harmed, no one can come forward on Ellen's behalf to say that there was an issue, with the investigation. I know it's appalling. Who we have in studio today, without further ado, is Ellen's father, Dr. Greenberg. We're going to bring him in, and I want to talk to Josh, Dr. Greenberg, about what this decision means to him. So if you'll please welcome Dr. Greenberg. Hi, doctor. How are you?
Well, as good as I can be. I'm very good. We really finally made progress. This has been like a two-step, one step forward, two steps back, dealing with Philadelphia. As you know, and what really touched this off that you want to talk to me, we are now going before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to present our case.
And I can tell you, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, there are over 3,000 cases that the lower courts, that the Supreme Court are asked or look at to review. Look at over 3,000 cases. And according to my review, they only take just a few. I couldn't even find the number. The U.S. Supreme Court lists the number of cases they take within parameters, but it's a minuscule amount. So this is a huge win for the Greenbergs.
As you know, Jennifer, I'm not an attorney, even though I've been involved in this case for 13 years. So when I found out, and I spoke to some of my friends, acquaintances, whatever, every attorney was really, really, really impressed that we got this case before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, of just Pennsylvania. This is no small matter. We're very grateful that they took the case. They're looking at it. We are very thankful. We want to thank the lower court because we believe they also helped set this up by their ruling. As you said, they ruled 2-1 against us on standing, but they had a 32-page decision. 30 pages of that decision said that we should get justice for our daughter. And we hope to get that. We have our hands and toes and everything crossed. We really appreciate the Supreme Court taking it. They didn't have to take the case. They could have just thrown it out. And as you said, even though they get a huge number of cases and they don't take them all, they take the cases that have merit. Now, what do I mean by that? This case could be a precedent-setting case in the legal world that we have precedent. We have set standing to do this, and the case itself, which is involved with a number of precedents, may be changed. I'll tell you one that I think should be changed. Number one, the medical examiner cannot be confronted that his conclusion is wrong or should be reevaluated. He walks on water, and none of us walk on water. All of us make mistakes, all of us. And we have a case that we think we have evidence, solid evidence. And, I'm not dancing on any tables. I'm not up and down shouting like an idiot. We have handled this case as professionals dealing with professionals. I really am being very kind in my own mind. I'm going to make a comment here that I shouldn't do, but I'm going to do it anyway. We don't think the Philadelphia criminal justice system is very professional. We think they have conspired against my wife, Sandy, and I to cover up Ellen's death as a suicide when it is really a homicide. Some of the things you brought up, if you look at the lock on the door that he supposedly broke through, it is not twisted, deformed, or anything. It looks perfect. There is no damage to the door or the door frame. He was allegedly came up there with somebody, and he didn't. There's blood on Ellen's cheek, and the blood is going horizontally. Blood doesn't drain horizontally. Gravity pulls liquids down, but this is a blood streak from her nose to her ear, and that would be indicative of her being lying back on her back with her face up. And that's not what it has. It's the way I'm saying, from her nose to her ear, and that makes no sense. So there's a lot of things that make no sense. An expert in neurophysiology, Dr. Rourke, who's very, very well respected and has some very personal traits. Dr. Rourke, if she does an exam, she does a report, and she submits a bill, and she gets paid. Well, none of those things have occurred. And when you speak to her, she'll tell you that if I didn't submit a bill, and if I didn't submit a report, and if I didn't get paid, I didn't see this subject. So there's a lot of things going on here. And then the cherry on top of the whole thing was the testimony of a neurophysiologist brought in by the medical examiner just to examine this. What the heck? And she said that there were wounds that Ellen had because there was no blood on them. That means they were post-mortem. So that we're supposed to believe that we have a suicide victim who can administer post-mortem wounds and not bleed. Ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. That's such a good summary. And
if Jennifer wants to, Jennifer, why don't you show? We had a schematic, a dummy of the wounds that Ellen that she suffered with, and if you look at those wounds, no one could suffer not back out of those wounds. And Ellen was in pain. There's a major wound that went up into her skull, into her brain, and damaged her spinal cord. And even that did.
Oh my goodness, Josh. Josh might have hit something here. Shoot. Dr. Greenberg? I'm going to remove him, and I'm hopeful that he's able to come back in. But essentially, he summed up so well a lot of these details as to why she didn't take her own life. Now, it's been alleged that she had mental health issues and things like that. Yes, she was taking some medication for anxiety, but there was never, ever any information that she even thought about taking her own life. That was completely blown out of proportion, according to the Greenbergs. Oh, it looks like he's back. And I think that's a very important point to make, that not only was this physically really an impossibility, the mental state was not there for Ellen to want to take her own life. I'm bringing you back.
Okay, Ellen's behavior had become different, and I made a deal with her. Ellen wanted to go home, and she wouldn't tell us why, or we didn't know why. And I made a deal. She went to a psychiatrist that her mother and I picked out because I didn't feel capable of treating psychological problems. She and the psychiatrist said she could go home. She could go home. That psychiatrist, was never contacted by any of the authorities. And if they would have found out that she, in her notes, said Ellen was not, that's the word. I lost my words.
Not wanting to take her own life.
Right, not doing suicide. And number two, she was suffering from anxiety. And anxiety is not a cause of suicide. Depression is, but Ellen was not suffering with depression. Also, she was given some medications, which were standard medications. And when the body, when she passed, they did check how much medication, and the medications were well within the medical limits that they should. So there's just so many things that point to that Ellen was doing okay, and there was no reason for her to take her life.
And I think there's some other important points about why this points to homicide and why it was originally ruled a homicide. And that is the fact there were bruises along Ellen's body that were in various stages of healing. Where did those bruises come from? In addition, there weren't defensive wounds against a sharp object, but there was bruising on her hands, as if possibly
bruising on her wrists, like they had been restrained. And let's go back to the bruising. The bruising was consistent with abuse. Ellen was being abused, and that was also something there.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely indicative of a motive like this, that things could have gotten out of control. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Greenberg, but wasn't her engagement ring found on a table?
We believe Ellen was preparing to leave that day. She had reached the point where she had enough, I'm going to say something. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist. Let's just say she reached the point of having the courage to confront possibly whoever was abusing her and leave. And the engagement ring, which was very expensive and very, very expensive, was on the night table. So Jennifer mentioned some people. I believe you mentioned some people came. Some relatives of the fiance came and took the laptops and cell phones and things of her cell phones and laptops, but they left the engagement ring, a very expensive piece of jewelry. So we can't figure that out. So there's a lot of peculiarity here of things that don't add up, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Who goes in as a relative when this horrible crime has been committed and horrible death is before you of your fiance's or of your relative's fiance, and you care about taking cell phones and laptops? You care about taking them if there's something on them you're worried about.
Correct. Then their value goes way up and jewelry goes way down. And
absolutely.
And it doesn't make sense. And then Dr. Osborne, there's a crucial piece of tissue, Ellen's spinal tissue, claims that he, in the snow, took it across to an expert to have it evaluated in the snow. The expert denies ever seeing the spinal tissue, ever. So it's a I'm going to use a bad term here, cock and bull story, for lack of a better term. And we've spoken to the expert, and she said, if I didn't write a report, if I didn't submit a bill, if I didn't get paid, I never saw the tissue. And
Right.
that's
So essentially, just to boil that down for everybody, basically there was direct false information that was in the autopsy report. And
yes.
the investigator that the Greenbergs hired nailed that down back to the source of that information, and that person said didn't happen. So that's a direct untruth in the autopsy report.
When this goes before the Supreme Court, and my wife and my wife's and my attorney present it, we feel we have a winner because we have a mountain of evidence, not hearsay evidence, strict, real evidence, hard evidence. Things like a door that's supposed to have a broken swing lock on it that is not even touched. There's no damage to the door. Somebody's not exactly telling the truth.
Exactly. But let's keep in mind that the actual point that the Supreme Court is going to be deciding isn't the merits of the case. It's specifically going to be, were the Greenbergs, were they harmed? And how in the world could anyone think that the horrible death of your only child did not harm the Greenbergs? I mean, Dr. Greenberg, tell us what this has meant to your life, you and Sandy.
Well, it means that I would say 40% of our life is occupied by this in some fashion every day. Talking to people, discussing it with people, meeting new people. Some of it is in the middle of the night when I wake up and I do go over how I'm going to handle podcasts. We have been very fortunate that the media has helped us so much and stood by us and taken such an interest in the case that's what's kept this case going, the media. But I have to be honest, forthright, and project that way. So I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about what I'm going to say and going over my words, try and choose them carefully because I don't want to harm the case. The case is very important to us. Justice for Ellen is very, very important to us.
And Josh, what has it meant just to not have Ellen?
Our life is different. Our life has changed. We don't have a daughter. We don't have any of the trappings that we'd have if we had a daughter who's married and has children, and we have grandchildren, and we celebrate holidays, and we do things that we don't do. It's not part of it. Luckily, very luckily, my wife and I have been able to keep our marriage going and keep us going. And I truly believe that our fight has been a crucial part of this, that we know we're right and we know they're wrong. And we want to get to the point where we prove it's wrong and get to the point that Ellen will get justice, that she did not commit suicide. That's what it's all about. Justice for Ellen. I know it sounds like a catchphrase, but that's the truth.
It is. And it's the fight has been so real. You and I talked before you came on and you made a comment about my outfit. And I was going to make a comment about my outfit because normally I'm very conservative. I have my jackets on. I wore this for Ellen because your daughter was what I call a fashionista. My daughter's the same way. I'm not, but they were. Your daughter, just when you look at the outfits she wore, her makeup, her hair, she was stunning. And I also say this because it makes zero sense, as you've pointed out, that she would try to, mutilate her body as a choice of how to end a situation. It makes no sense. So today I stand somewhat in, I think, an outfit that I actually saw her, a similar outfit that she wore, just as a reminder of the beauty of.
Well, we fashioned vacations, like we went away during Christmas to Mexico or took a cruise or something, but we fashioned these vacations so that we were in a position where Ellen would be afraid to do anything to herself because it would hurt her, like jump over the board or do get her. One of our famous family stories is she wanted to get her ears pierced for a second time, and I presented the sequela of having your ears pierced again, and she didn't have her ears pierced again. And it's a famous story in our family that Ellen didn't like being uncomfortable. She didn't like pain, and when she reached the points where she could do something like go somewhere with other boys who were older, like in Acapulco, we stopped going to Acapulco. We went on a cruise, and we knew she would not even look over the railing to see if there was water there.
Right. She was cautious. She was cautious, and her beauty, her appearance, her fashion was important to her. And I think these points are important.
The girl had more lip gloss than anybody in the world. She had all the colors, all the shades, it was known that there was a drawer in her desk that was just lip gloss. I think I'm using the right word. I'm not a fashionista like her.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so my understanding is mid-September, a brief is due. We don't have a date before the court. Is that your understanding?
Yes, all I know is we've been accepted and the court's going to hear the case. I haven't seen the paperwork that the court sent out. I haven't spoken extensively with my attorney because he's working, and so I don't know anything about dates or anything. But we got this. Let's say we got this notice on what we would expect to be the right amount of time between presenting the case and the court reviewing the case.
And just to let the audience know, they aren't only fighting, the state, the government, the law enforcement, everything else. The amicus brief was prepared by, and I want to make sure I say exactly who it was prepared by the National Association of Medical Examiners. So they even inserted themselves in this case to basically say, listen, medical examiners should remain untouched. They're giving an opinion. It's not really other than helping with persuasion in a court of law. It's an opinion. So they've even come in to help fight this battle. The Greenbergs have taken on everyone. And finally, it seems like a pawn has moved in the right direction for the Greenbergs.
We hope so. It's been a not even a fight, a battle, where we would win one thing and go back two or something like that. They have done everything to keep us out of court because I'm sure they believe once we get to court, we do have the evidence to support our position.
Well, and it would be a disgrace not to bring up the fact that the head of the district attorney's office during this time frame was Shapiro. And as many people know, he's being considered as the vice president of the United States should Kamala Harris be elected. I mean, literally a heartbeat away from being the president. And this is a person in large part responsible for the situation that we're in with this deplorable ruling that occurred. Any comment on that?
I'd rather not.
All right. It's sticky business.
Very sticky.
And this isn't about politics. I want to make that crystal clear. This isn't about politics. This is about a concern over the district attorney and his office at the time, their actions in terms of, or inaction, in terms of their role in having this declared a homicide. Remember, this was a closed door meeting. And according to very specifically what the ME said was the reason he changed his mind was because she was alone. And what was that based on? That was based on the fiance's words. What medical examiner does that? His examination should be what is involved in making his determinations.
The conclusion of suicide was brought about by the police putting pressure on the ME. Theoretically, the police and the medical examiner are two separate crime investigating organs. They are not working together, and they do not look at each other's material. But in this case, the police put a concerted effort on the medical examiner's office to change it from homicide to suicide. And that in itself is very suspicious. I hate to use words like that, but that's the way it's supposed to be. The medical examiner and the police are two separate entities. So it's like it's a checks and balance system that we have in our society, in our democracy.
I agree with you. They do intertwine. Obviously, the medical examiner will ask for reports. They will go out to a crime scene. They conduct typically their own investigation, which is your point, that there should never be any influence from a police entity or a district attorney's office onto that medical examiner. And that's
how many police officers have medical degrees?
And yeah, no, you're exactly right. They don't. That's not their purview. And
they're trained in their field and they work there, and that's where they shine. They really shine in real crime investigation. So when something like this happens, where they have a meeting where they don't have any records, where they can't tell you who was there, a whole batch of things that don't make any sense. There is no record of the meeting that the police had with the medical examiner's office and assistant district attorneys to get Dr. Osborne to change from homicide to suicide. No record.
And how did you all initially find out about the meeting?
I don't even know. Believe me, I don't know. I wish I knew.
It
came about maybe from somebody or something. I don't know.
I know Dr. Osborne initially said that that's when he changed his mind. I think the ruling was officially changed in April. So
we do know that the police had a meeting with the medical examiner 3 days after Ellen's death. So this was really put into position quickly. And there's no record, no written record. We don't know who's there. And they don't want to tell us that also.
And you filed multiple motions and things to try to get your hands on the entirety of the case file. What do you have? What portion do you have right now?
Well, let me go back a second. If the case is closed, okay, there's no investigation. Suicide in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is not a crime. So any of the statutes that pertain to the police retaining their records and not giving records out to the public don't exist, because this is not a crime. So the fact they're holding any records or all records is just an abomination. It's just one of those things they're doing to make it more difficult for my wife and I. And what was your question? I'm sorry.
No, I was just asking, how much of the case file do you?
We think we finally got at least 70%. And that's 5,000 pages that we have to go through. So I don't have it. My attorneys have it, but we don't even have everything. There are things like, you mentioned the fact that a cleaning service came to the apartment and cleaned it up before the police investigated. Well, number one, the manager of the building had taken a video of the apartment before they came. She was ordered to give the police the video. They can't find it. Number two, the cleaning service usually takes a video. They can't find it. It's things like this that make no sense. How come in this case you can't find your normal evidence?
Right.
And that's what we're dealing with.
And that's indicative when there is some sort of, bad actions. There's a big difference between, so I read some of these police reports, and it's clear the incompetence of the initial responding officers, completely incompetent. There was a horrible snowstorm. They wanted to get home. The fact that they left this crime scene unattended until a homicide unit, until warrants could be obtained, was unbelievable. And the fact, of course, that they allowed.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The material that they used to look for blood doesn't get cleaned up right away. They never
Aluminum.
used that material to see if there was any more blood stains in the apartment. So that they could have done that at the least, and they never did that.
Well, and a whole crime scene reconstruction, based on where the body was, as you said, the blood that flowed this way instead of this way.
Right.
In other words, she was found in the upright position, I should say, leaning against a cabinet, so vertical. And that is the big belief that, of course, she was truly in the supine position initially and then dragged over to that cabinet. And it also doesn't fit with anyone
Oh,
taking their own
and
life.
the fact that she doesn't have cuts on her hand, but she has her wrists are severely bruised from restraint.
Mhm. No, exactly. I just wanted to ask you one last question, doctor, and I just can't thank you enough for being here. There's so many people in the audience that truly care about Ellen. They want to see justice for your family. Is there anything you wanted to leave them with at this time?
Yes, this could be your child. That you could be. God forbid it happens, anything similar to this, because of the way the precedents are set. The medical examiner doesn't have to answer to anybody the conclusion. This could happen to anybody's child or person or relative or husband or wife. And it's just wrong. Medical examiners do not have the ability to walk on water.
Right. And go unchecked. And neither do DAs and neither do law enforcement officers. But particularly in this case, it's the medical examinators change in manner of death that has stalled out justice for Ellen Greenberg. What I would say is ask for everyone here, if you have a social media platform of any nature, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or Twitter X, anything, please use that platform to retweet information about Ellen and Ellen's case. Use your platform to ask for justice. It's the social media and mainstream media that will keep this alive and keep pressure for justice.
As always, I want to thank you and the other media outlets and people who have kept this alive. Without them, we would be nowhere. We don't have, even with an amazing amount of money that we unfortunately had to spend, over $600,000, have the wherewithal to fight the Philadelphia criminal justice system.
And I want to bring up something really quick on that note. When you and I first talked, and it seems like it's been a year and a half or more ago about this case, 2 years ago, whenever the exact date was, Mr. Greenberg was so, I'll just say it, I don't know, generous to say, Jennifer, I would love, how much do you cost basically to keep, talking about her case? And I said, I'm not going to charge you anything. And then you even offered to give to the charity of my choice. I said, the charity of my choice is Ellen Greenberg. So let's, try to give any money that you would be expending on this sort of publicity to finding justice in the legal system. So I want to thank you for even thinking of that, and just say advocacy should cost nothing, and it doesn't cost anything on this platform. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to say goodbye now. I'm going to quickly address the audience really quickly. I can't thank you enough for coming on. We'll keep our dialogue going. Please, all my best to Sandy. I communicate with her often. And justice for Ellen Greenberg.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I just was so excited to hear this news when Sandy reached out. I was just like, yes, there is true hope that the Supreme Court will change its ruling, that this will move to a civil case. In civil case, remember, discovery is much more broad, and it could mean true justice for Ellen Greenberg. Let me just check a couple of questions unless anything pops up. Yes, I mean, everybody is just basically saying justice for Ellen. It is a horrible story, and please use your platforms. I'll keep, and I have for, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years. This is one of these cases I'll never let go of because there's such an injustice here. So until next time, I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the members who are on here. Thank you for the mods that took time tonight to come and make sure there isn't any nastiness in the comments. You would never think there could be on a subject like this. So thank you all. And until next time, which will be tomorrow night, a special episode with the family of Nikki Soleil McCain, who is still missing under a domestic violence type situation. It's going to be horrific. You're not even, if you thought, and this case is one of the worst I've ever seen, but this missing case, unbelievable. So I hope you'll join us tomorrow, same time, same bat channel, 6:30. Thank you so much.